We are now live on the fourth edition of our Master's Mentoring Program. You are now looking at the Passion of Christ, Anatomy, Theology, and Philosophy. Without further ado, we would like to welcome back our mentor, Emmanuel Garibay.
The course or the program of Master in Divinity is basically a preparation for a ministerial position in the church. So it's not really heavy on the academics. It's basically a preparation to turn you into a church functionary. But having said that, as an artist, I think I also made extra efforts to deepen my art by constantly informing myself of a lot of things, from biblical scholarship to philosophy to art history, and how they are all related. Yes. So if you compare these two images, so on the left, you have the familiar looking Jesus. And this one is an artist's rendition based on the findings by archaeological scholars of how Jesus may have actually looked like. So if you see the two faces are very contrasted. So one looks very Semitic, and the other one is very Caucasian. So yeah, and there's too much. There's emphasis on the gentleness of the facial features. The hair is kind of brunette or blonde, a cross between that. But this guy is very black, and he has a more rounded nose, and a lot of things are so contrasted, no? And if you see this guy today, you would very likely not regard him as the image of Jesus. No? So what's the significance of all this? You see, back in the 15th to 16th century, we have that period we call Renaissance, more in the 15th century. And that's when Italians started portraying the stories in the Bible, and most especially stories about Jesus, Mary, the disciples, as contextualized and contemporarized. So what do I mean by that? No? It means like if we put it in Philippine context and Philippine contemporary times, Jesus would probably look like me, no? In t-shirts and in shorts, because it's very hot here. It's tropical. Let's move away from that, and then let's look at the Hollywood versions of the Jesuses, all the Jesuses in Hollywood. So like you have Jim Caviezel, and then you have Robert Powell, you have Max von Sydow. I think at some point Christian Bale also portrayed Jesus, and then you have Willem Dafoe. No? I was gonna say de Kooning. Yeah. So and all of these again are very much contrasted to what the real Jesus of Nazareth may have actually looked like. And then the years that followed, that was also the time when the colonization of the world started. So that and it was an enterprise that not only intended to colonize the world, but to spread Christianity throughout the world. And that was the image of Jesus, the image looking like one of them, a very European image of Jesus that they took with them in order to colonize the world. So like if you put it in the Philippine context, Jesus is a white man. And it was very, very powerful. Just imagine thinking of the image of God as a white man. And that has been instrumental in our sense of submission towards white men for more than 400 years. And even up to now, that still continues, because if you look at the churches in the Philippines, it still retains most of that white Jesus, you know. So just imagine the thought of having an image of God as very much different from your ethnicity, no? And that's what you call colonization. So you may say, oh, we're no longer colonized. We have been independent for so many years now. Well, political colonization can last only so long, but ideological and cultural and religious colonization lingers. It takes a much, much longer time. So I think what requires of us at the moment is to have a deeper understanding of the implication of who Jesus is. So Jesus is basically a theological construction. That is, if you take it intellectually, and it's really hard to take it that way because it trivializes in a way the value it is that it bears on us, no? In terms of, you know, a major signifier as to what life means. But I think the major problem with how we have identified with Jesus is more as someone as an object of our piety, no? Someone to worship, someone to adore. And I think we have overlooked the more important aspect of who Jesus is, you know? And if you look at it theologically, Jesus was presented to us because we cannot understand God. So there's no other way by which humans can understand God as God, but only through another human being. So if that's the case, isn't the idea of Jesus supposed to be a model, someone to be followed? So there's a difference between someone to be followed and someone to be worshipped. You worship something because that thing is way beyond you and cannot become you. You know, we follow someone because there's a closer chance that you can be that one, you know, that person that you are trying to follow. So, and what he's saying, I mean, if you base it on his teachings, it's really not that hard. You know, what I mean, he summarizes all the commandments. No? There are actually more than 10 commandments. No? But that's the only one we know because if we base it on the so-called Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. But his main summation of all the commandments is to love God with all your heart and with all your might, or all your soul. I don't really know how that whole thing goes, but the idea is to love God. And the next line that follows is to love your neighbor as yourself. So what does that imply? You cannot really love God as God, again, because with all the songs and the psalms and the praises, these are just expression of your profound gratitude for your experience in life. But the real act of loving God is through loving your neighbor. Diba? That's the concrete expression of loving God. And when you sum it all up, it's all about social justice. It's as simple as that. No? And if you look at the world today, it's the complete negation of what that message is about. No? Look at the gap between the rich and the poor, and how the rich are they're manipulating everything to their favor. No? Diba? There's this absolute deficiency or absence of social justice. Diba? So, I mean, this is an oversimplification of the significance of the passion of Jesus. But and the whole thing that is saying is it is the intensity of our belief to an idea, no, that enables us to commit ourselves to whatever it takes in order to stay true to it. But I think the church needs to be reminded from time to time, like this one. The church needs to be reminded of what is there in the first place. This is an image of the title of this one, by the way. No? So like Jesus and the 12 disciples see each other again after around 2,000 years or so. And as you can see, all the disciples are very happy, you know, like they've become leaders of their own churches. So, I mean, there are so many Christian churches all over the world. Yeah, so the story goes like they have become leaders and in many ways become very comfortable and, you know, gratified by being leaders of their own respective churches. And the only unhappy person in that picture is the guy at the middle. No? So it doesn't take such effort to figure out who that guy is. So this story comes from the last chapter of Luke, where after Jesus was crucified, all the disciples got really scared and went in different directions. So two of the disciples decided to go to a place called Emmaus. So that's like a whole day's walk away from Jerusalem. So as they were walking, they met a stranger and invited this stranger to walk with them in the same, because this stranger was going the same direction. So they had this lengthy conversation. And it was only at the dinner table that they realized who the stranger was. No? And it turned out to be Jesus. Now, this is a very, very strange story. No? I mean, if you just think about it, it has so much implication. First, no matter how cleverly disguised anyone is, you will easily or eventually see through the disguise after having that long conversation. So how come the disciples never realized that it was Jesus? No? So this may be a signal point because this is the point where it distinguishes who the historical Jesus is from the Jesus of the resurrection. No? And the Jesus of the resurrection can be the one that is most theological um, in its application. No? So it can be interpreted according to different perspectives. So in this case, I am portraying Jesus from the perspective of those to whom the mission should be focused on the first place. So this is focused on people who are looked down by society, marginalized, because they are different and because they are seen as those who live lives that are not acceptable on the basis of the mores, the norms of society.
So you have all these ideas, no? So now, as from the point of view of an artist, now you start incorporating all these ideas, you know. So, and that's where we get lost. We have so many going on in the mind. So, yung first attempt of the composition itself. So it, especially for those who are just getting into the storytelling type of visuals, it's like, where do we start?
Yeah, so that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, and I was going to segue into that because, like, I was expected to do some drawing. Was this demonstration? So sometimes, like, if you're sketching, doing a sketch of the face, then you have this. One of the formula is, you know, like you have these measured distances from the eyes, no, and then from the nose, the mouth, and ganon. So may mga, there are formulas that have been developed through the years on how this can be taught, no? Okay. So you have all these features there, no? And so you just add some hair or whatever. You can make it curly or straight, no? So I guess in my case, this phase took a much shorter time, or I actually never went through this phase. And because I was very restless, and I wasn't the kind who takes easily to following instructions, which I realized was a good thing, because the next phase in doing art is just actually more of following your intuition, no? So instead of that usual, you know, kind of, you just do kind of random, what do you call this? Doodling. Doodling, yeah. And look for the image. So sometimes you don't even have an idea of what you're doing. You know, you just let your hand take you wherever you want to go. So, and sometimes you just do it because you're restless, you're impatient, you don't know how to make use of the time, and since you're kind of stuck in one situation where, like, you're waiting and then there's nothing else to do except to sit down and doodle. So that's it, no? So you come up with a lot of unplanned images. So, and then you can use a range of materials this time. So this is more to, now I'm working towards what I would say, trying to make the image look good, you know, instead of just being sketchy.
How do you define the Garibay now as compared to the Garibay that was starting years then?
I think it's something that applies to all of us, we're not fixed as people, as persons. We change, and the change is in many dimensions. And I think the more significant change that we feel is that which adds dimension to our understanding of the world. And I was consciously seeking that kind of understanding when I did my theological education.
Has there been any major change in the way you view the world right now as compared to when you were starting?
Definitely. Right now, I feel that many of the things I do is pretty much also informed by philosophy. I've been catching up on that. So I mean, I've after doing biblical studies, I am now presently into philosophy and realizing how important philosophy is. The major purpose in life is to be able to determine oneself through one's action, not to be determined by the things external to us. I mean, things like tradition, heritage, handed down beliefs can still matter in terms of making having a sense of connection to who we are, and because I feel identity is still very important. So you may no longer hold the same kind of conviction or belief to that which you regard as among the things that define your identity. I would say the practice of doing art has been very helpful in this direction, because like most of the time when you're painting, you're always alone, and it gives you a lot of time to reflect. So again, this is one of the instances where you distinguish a drawing from a painting. So here you have a drawing, and here you have a painting. Well, it's not exactly a painting, but it's closer to a painting, mainly because it's a more complete picture. There's more intention to finish this one as compared to this. You're just planning. That's why in our colloquial, diba, language, when you say, ayan, magaling lang yan mag-drawing. No? So hanggang plano lang, hindi talaga nangyayari. I think one must always strive for conclusion, for thoroughness. No? So so this is one case where you're actually able to overcome such things as your limited talent, your limited craft. So by like in this case, this is a device that you can always use by kind of filling the whole area with a dark kind of space. Now, the good thing about art, or when you're doing it, like life, like if you make mistakes, you can do erasures and to make it look better. No? So, but unlike life, if you've done something wrong in the past, you cannot erase that past. It will always be there. Here, I'm erasing a section of it to enhance the image. So this is a technique that you can use. So like, it is through the highlights that the image is enhanced. So it's so different when it started, no? Yeah. Ganyan lang, no? Parang it's not really relying on skills or yung what would you say, sharpness of the strokes. This would be guys like the ones I mentioned earlier, Velasquez or John Singer Sargent. But this is a way of concealing your own deficiencies. imperfections in the image can be concealed by the shades or the shadows. And then some sections can be enhanced by the highlights.
It was really amazing and a learning experience listening to Manny Garibay, and I believe that was his expertise, and I learned a lot from that point. And all artists have different kind of focus, no, and I would say that Manny had really focused so much on divinity and theology, and that's a learning experience for me. But this one that you see, the crucifixions and the resurrections that you see here, is just a study for the mural I did for the Antipolo Shrine. No? If you visit the Antipolo Shrine, the church in Antipolo, this is what you will see at the altar. Yeah, drawing. What Manny did is what most artists do when they start doing figures. You do dissections, and you have to imagine the distance of eyes and nose and mouth that makes the whole face, no? And even the body, you have to dissect sections from shoulders to your hips to your feet. There's a certain rules that you have to follow to create the right anatomy of human form. That's basically, you should have a formula in everything that you do. But so all artists have a way of doing things, but their formula maybe differ a little things from the other, but generally it's all like the same. So now I will start again by showing to you my anting-anting, this one. I will always I always say that I carry it everywhere I go. This is my weapon. So when I sit down in any place, as Manny said, you do nothing, but if you have like this, you can do something. So your time will not be wasted. Again, I have this magic cotton, and then the magic eraser, and then the small charcoals and sepia pencil. This is a long pencil that I remove the wooden part so that it would fit to my anting amulet, this one, so that it can just be like a necklace that I can carry everywhere. So it's it. So may I start now? Since I'm trying to figure out the image of Christ risen, no? Okay. Okay. So right now I am working on the face of Christ, imagining a risen Christ, no? So it's like looking at the sky, and it's to create the feeling that he is risen from the dead. No? We have the It's my cotton. Okay, it's like cotton. Then I have to do some smudging. That's it. Cotton or tissues can be used. Now we have here, it's like here, the eraser that also money used. No, as they say, eraser is something that when you want to eliminate something, you erase. So to create highlights, okay, you want to put highlights where you think the light came from. See, that's it. Okay. Then you go into details, like especially the eyes, no? Because in every portrait, they say that the eyes is the window of the soul. So you have to really put emphasis on the eyes. Now doing some details. Okay. The eyes, the nose, and the lips should have create some detailed I always put a bird in every my painting. There's always a bird in your painting. What does it mean? I just say that's the soul of the artist inside the painting. It's almost done, no? And so that's it. Done. Okay. So I'll put my signature here to show that it's done already. So we have recently had this art exchange done with fellow artists from Malaysia, from Kuala Lumpur, for a week, and just the same, we visited Kuala Lumpur for the next 7 days. No, so it's an art exchange. Cultural and art experience that we did, and that was really very, very a good learning experience on both sides of artists from two different countries.
So this is the
Oh.
this is the one, right? This is in
Yeah.
this building.
No, that's the other side. That's the other building along the highway. It's there is a gallery also run by my son-in-law and my daughter, the Giant Dwarf Gallery. That's where it is. This is the area. That's the art camp. The art camp is the one where I stay now. It's my studio and workshop area.
So we can do some workshop here, huh?
Yeah.
Can we afford your painting, Lemmy?
Huh?
My
Can we
friends,
afford your paintings?
they're also buying from the masters who are here.
Okay, I have a lot.
Yeah, so there you go. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
his location and his art shop there. So the Nemi Miranda Cafe, it's actually a
Hi,
garage.
this one is so nice, mother and child.
You see, this is sculpture he stuck right on his bahay kubo. He calls this his bahay kubo, like a nipa hut, but it's not a
My
nipa.
God. Oh, nice.
Yeah. So folks, friends of Eagle Eye Charities, when COVID is over and they're not going to require us for a 7 days quarantine, we do plan to come to the Miranda. So most likely that's probably next year already, right? We also have here Manny Garibay's very own page, and we will be uploading some of his talks here. And his last one, the Art and Theology, it's like a PowerPoint presentation that is here. Well, it's not really a PowerPoint, but if you want to see all the rest of Manny Garibay, it's on eaglecharities.org/Manny-Garibay. Salud. Thank you so much po everyone and all those who joined us. Happy Easter.